girlfriend.
Hey.
Welcome to a Justice episode. We call these mini episodes, y'all. They are informal, but it is a chance for us to chime in on things that are happening in the news right now. And we know that many of us have unfortunately saw the tape of Diddy assaulting Cassie. And you all have asked us what our opinion was. You know that this is now our second time.
Third.
That's right. Our third time broaching this subject, so those videos will be linked down below for sure. But we have our thoughts, our reactions, and even a bit of legal analysis around what all has gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who haven't seen the other two videos, we encourage you to. Cassie filed a civil lawsuit a couple months ago against Diddy that was settled within a day of filing, which is significant because typically people don't settle that quickly. You settle that quickly for a reason.
And that's what we said.
And we said that the allegations in the lawsuit were so specific and so egregious and were exactly consistent with the video that was then released this past week. And months ago when the lawsuit was filed, we said that the allegations were so specific, so egregious, and so many of them.
Yes.
That not only were they credible, but that there was likely many more victims.
Absolutely.
And because many of the incidents that were alleged in the lawsuit happened in places like hotels and other kind of publicly adjacent spaces, there was rumblings that maybe there was record of this somewhere, but we know that P. Diddy had a lot of people covering for him.
And paying people off and giving out hush money has been his style his whole career.
Correct. And because in the allegations in the initial lawsuit, there were also many allegations of illicit substances and Diddy giving his victims illicit substances and coercing them into behaviors that maybe they wouldn't have agreed to if but for the illicit substances and the abuse, that our hypothesis was that there was every incentive for everyone to settle.
Exactly. And again, as Margo said, settle, he did. And he has also, beyond settling, of course, what he said first was in the settlement that it was not an admission of guilt.
Right. It was no admission of guilt. And people were used, like, he kept saying, like, people were, like, extorting him and using his name. And all of it seemed like such baloney. But people believed him. A lot of people believed him.
Can I just say something too? Not only did they believe him, but what I heard in the Black community, I remember watching a video, maybe a TikTok video or IG reel, some vertical content of Slim Thug, D-list celebrity, and no shade against Slim Thug, but this is something that he said that I heard a lot of people say. We don't have a lot of Black billionaires. Why that's the standard that we should be aspiring towards, I don't know. But we don't have a lot of Black billionaires, and this is just a way of tearing a Black man down, which for many of us, we have heard our entire lives, and what it has come along with is not protecting and often abusing and victimizing Black women and girls.
And it also disincentivizes from people seeking safety, because if they're doing it and feeling responsible for the taking down of Black men, then they are incentivized to not do anything and not be protected. And it shouldn't be mutually exclusive.
I mean, that was my personal experience. I remember, as I mentioned in a previous episode, being thrown out of my home that I shared with a partner at that time. And one of the last times it happened, my friend was there and she was like, "Why are we just picking your stuff up off the lawn? We need to call the police." And I was like, "We don't call the police." On a macro scale, we know that this is what Megan Thee Stallion said. Like, she didn't call the police on Tory Lanez. It was the summer of the George Floyd murder.
It was the summer of 2020.
And she said, we don't call the police. Like, the police are killing Black people, Black men in the streets. State-sanctioned violence seems to be at an all-time high. At the very least, it's being captured on camera. We don't call the police. And so, yes, we will allow for ourselves, and our community will allow for Black women and femmes to be murdered, victimized, etc., with virtually no accountability for Black men. And that was the case until the CNN video.
Right. And so on May 18th, on Monday, CNN released, I think it was CNN. Anyway, there was a video released kind of, and it went viral immediately from the hotel where one of these egregious assaults happened, where it was very clearly Cassie and it was very clearly Diddy. Diddy was I don't need to describe that. It was horrific. And it was everywhere. And our initial reaction, and one of the reasons we didn't comment immediately, was that this is bullshit. That we don't need to have video proof of every horrific incident to believe that it happened.
Absolutely not. And also, it is traumatizing to all victims of intimate partner and patriarchal violence in this way. And it is so horrific for Cassie and her entire family to have to live and relive.
So what we don't know, and we were just talking about this before, is whether this video was released with or without Cassie's permission.
Absolutely.
So we just don't know. There has been no indication that it was released without her permission. Her lawyers did comment, but did not say it was released without her permission. And so why Monday? That's what I kept asking, right? Her lawsuit already was settled months ago, and we don't know exactly why it was released or who released it. But my instinct is that there are many more lawsuits coming, and this might be something to encourage Diddy to settle.
So there are a lot of conspiracy theories that are going around the internet that I know many of our viewers and listeners probably have already heard of. The first thing I heard was that someone at the hotel knew about it when it happened, and that Diddy paid people off at the hotel $50,000, right? Second thing I heard was that...
But then why Monday?
Why Monday? That doesn't explain that.
I mean, I believe that he paid them off.
The second thing I heard was, and these are just like allegations. The second allegation I heard was that during the raid of his, was it Miami home?
I think it was 2 homes. It was LA and Miami.
So in one of the homes, the tape was actually there, and this was law enforcement that has leaked the tape. I don't know what their incentive might be for doing that, but that is the other theory that is going around. So a lot of people have opinions about this all, but what is most true to me and what is most important is believe victims. The mechanics and logistics of how we saw the tape doesn't matter because we never needed the tape. Just believe victims. And that is the data on that.
And a lot of people, absolutely. A lot of people are wondering kind of with such an egregious, horrific assault, right? Multiple incidents of very brutal violence with hands, feet,
throwing things,
vases, right? Why wasn't he ever arrested?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good question. And then there's also the question of, could he be arrested now? And so what we've learned 2 things. One, he can't be arrested now for something that happened in 2016 because in LA County, apparently the incidents, which would probably be assault and battery with a deadly weapon, a shod foot, and a vase, probably have a 5-year statute of limitations. Mm-hmm. A statute of limitation is a period during which a criminal case can be filed against someone. And for most types of crimes, other than murder and certain forms of egregious sexual assault, there's a statute of limitations. And so what we saw was not sexual assault, although we know there have been allegations of sexual assault. And so nothing, as far as we know, can happen on the criminal side based on this video. Now, if someone had filed a police report contemporaneously, meaning at the time of the video, certainly he could have been arrested. But to be convicted...
But to be been arrested then?
Then.
Okay.
But to be convicted, he would have had to have a participating witness, which was Cassie. And as far as we know, Cassie was unable, and I like to say unable, to pursue a criminal case because she couldn't. And so it was too dangerous for her. She was too enmeshed, or she had no interest in engaging in the criminal process, which were all within her right. And unfortunately, or fortunately, you need a participating witness to convict someone in cases like this.
Okay, so I want to peel this back. Thank you for all of that. By the way, for folks who are watching us for the first time, just please know that Margo and we are the dynamic duo behind justice, as you know. But more importantly, we are reformed attorneys, and Margo is a former law professor specializing in intimate partner violence. So this idea of a participating witness, why is that required, especially when someone like Cassie and possibly other victims have been so brainwashed, abused, and tormented by their abusers, I would imagine it would be so difficult for them to be the one to like face their abuser in that way.
So this is one of the reasons why the majority of domestic violence and sexual assault cases don't go anywhere in the criminal justice system. I mean, one of the many reasons.
Oh, yeah.
In certain cases, and I wasn't a criminal attorney, you can move forward without a participating witness if you have someone else who witnessed the case,
I see. Like if one of the hotel employees or someone.
I think you could make the argument probably that the tape could come in, but then remember, in a criminal justice system, you have to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So was there any reasonable doubt that it wasn't Diddy? Mm-hmm. That it wasn't right? So any shred of doubt or inconsistency on the incident and the video. So
the tape would not have been admissible.
I don't know if it would have been admissible, and I don't know if it would have been enough. The point right now is that the statute of limitations has run.
So we are beyond that.
And for most cases, you need a participating witness victim. And as far as we know, Cassie was uninterested or unable in doing that then. Okay, so we have this video out now. It's all over. It's been incredibly triggering to all victims of domestic violence. And it feels very painful for a lot of individuals, understandably, that the only way people were going to believe that this happened was if it was on video. It sets a horrible precedent, right? Most assaults happen behind closed doors without any documentation. So that's one. And then Tuesday, what?
It was a few days later. I think it was yesterday.
Diddy comes out with an apology. So remember a couple months ago where he said that there was no admission of guilt, that he did nothing. So
he has been saying that, time will tell. He will be proven innocent. He has been categorically denying all of this.
Correct. And then yesterday or whenever he came out with this apology, he was like fake crying.
But no tears.
And said that he was ashamed and that he took responsibility, but it was a very dark time in his life and he went to rehab after, in therapy, and God forgave him.
What we're going to do is just stop this thing right here because I want everybody to understand this. Mental health issues or even diagnoses, substance abuse issues do not make you violent, sexual abusers, domestic violence. It does not make you a perpetrator of harm in any way.
And it doesn't excuse it.
We've got to stop this.
Right. So we know statistically that having a substance use disorder, having a mental health condition, being in a dark place puts you in no more likelihood of being violent than if you weren't. So it is not a defense.
It is not a defense.
He could have been wasted out of his mind. Most people who are wasted just go to sleep.
This is what I'm saying. And a lot of drugs actually do the opposite of that, of making you violent. So I don't know what he's on. That's not our business. I don't care to know because it is not an excuse.
Absolutely not.
And someone with his level of resource, get help, not abuse.
Also, it just was so offensive to me that was his apology. First of all, he never even named Cassie.
But you know what I thought too? Can he say her name? We don't know what was in the settlement agreement.
Right, okay. So, but even if he couldn't say her name, the person on the video, the victim, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't even mention that there was a victim.
Yep.
Or that he hurt someone.
It was just all forced. And I thought about his children and how sorry I felt for them. Obviously, Cassie, the fact that her children will always have a digital footprint of their mother being horrifically abused in that way.
Do you know what I thought of too? Kim Porter. Who died of a cold.
Yeah.
And maybe she did, but their relationship was always so strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
And she felt very isolated from the rest of the world.
And that is what all abusers do, but that's also what he did. That was his MO. That was R. Kelly's MO, right? The whole point is to take these women who are, by all objective standards, beautiful, talented, and to just
and young
and exploit them for his own gain and just sadistic behavior. And so, yes, a lot of his techniques of abuse have been around isolation, to the point that I heard just in like dinner conversation that one of the things that was alleged in the lawsuit is that he beat her so bad one time, talking about Cassie, that she had to spend months in a hotel in LA because she couldn't leave. She was so bruised and battered. So she was isolated, alone, victimized.
And think about how many people it took to pull that off.
Yes.
So it's not only Diddy. Clearly, he couldn't have done this on his own.
Can we have that conversation? Because in one of the last videos where we talked about this, I mentioned the term active bystander. I probably talked about what happened at a hotel in Miami where I saw a woman being abused in the pool and stood up for her and called for other people to do the same. Someone thought it was negligent for me to even suggest that folks kind of intervene when someone is being abused or harmed. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think it depends. And I think we don't know what situation a person's in. But in the case where we see abuse, we have, like, the only way we can help is by intervening. And if you were making the best judgment you could with the facts presented, I would have done the exact same thing. And I have done the same thing. So I've been in hotels, for example, where I've heard people being abused, and I've called the police.
Yeah. And intervention doesn't have to look the same. I'm not saying you need to go to your car and figure out a weapon. I'm saying is
no.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But I think that's where someone went when they commented, right? Like that. I'm saying physically get in the middle of the
You
fight.
should never do that. But standing up and saying what you're seeing is unacceptable is a way, one, for a victim to reach out for help if that's what they can do in the moment, but it also holds an abuser somewhat accountable that their behavior can't.
And think about what it means when it's risen to the level that it's happening in public. When he's running out of a room with a towel wrapped around him. Like, it's gotten to the point where this man is immune to any type of accountability. He's like, I am going to do what I want. This woman means nothing to me.
Or the only way this woman means anything to me is if I have complete control.
Because they said she was trying to leave. She was sneaking out.
He was asleep.
Yeah.
And you can tell that she was sneaking out because she didn't have her shoes on.
I didn't even notice that.
She had her, she was shaking. Well, you could tell she was running.
Okay, so let's talk about, he said his apology. Let me see.
What's next?
It was a point, okay, but it was another point that I wanted to make about the video. It'll come back to me. So what's next?
We don't know. I mean, I imagine there will be more here. We have not really heard anything about the raids.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is like what we call a condition precedent for more coming out about the raids. There are allegations that there are more victims, so I wonder if we're going to hear from more victims.
And there are more lawsuits currently.
Right, but that they will gain more traction.
Absolutely.
Or maybe he'll settle them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know there were some conspiracy theories that he was like trying to leave the country. So, and maybe has a home in the Bahamas or something.
I think another thing that is next is just like with Me Too, what I hope is that culturally as a society and also within the Black community, it is a time for us to redefine and allow for greater awareness to happen around what abuse looks like.
And that by standing up for victims, we're not pulling down men.
And standing up for victims is actually the expectation. And what it will actually do is make our entire community stronger.
Right. And I mean, also a call for education, right? If there's a lack of education about what is abuse, what are healthy and unhealthy relationships, that's a conversation that can be had in elementary schools.
And using this as a pop culture example. So, for example, I love to read the comments. I probably love the comments better than the content, to be honest with you, because it gives me a chance to like look at the psychology of people. And one of the comments under his video, what someone said was, hold your head up, Black man. Anybody who is watching this and has never had a fight with their partner is being dishonest. We all have fights. And it just made me so sad that someone can watch that and see a fight.
And normalize it.
But I also recognize that I had to have someone tell me that I was being abused. And so it is not far-fetched to believe that there are many people who have been conditioned out of a very natural understanding, whether it be by an abuser or by what they have seen within childhood, within familial dynamics, of just not understanding what abuse is. And this can be a moment to have that conversation and, again, provide education and awareness.
And I would say that it doesn't have to rise to this level to be abuse.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is kind of some of the more egregious forms of abuse.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
That I've seen. So, right, abuse can be isolation, it can be coercive control, it can be financial abuse, it can be using privilege, it can be getting you fired from a job. Of course, it can be physical and sexual too. It can be one incident, it can be many incidents. But it doesn't have to rise to the level of being so harmed.
I'll give you an example of this as well. My abuser, one of his favorite techniques is that he put me in a position to where I was completely isolated and wholly dependent on him and our small group in many ways, right? And then to punish me for not doing something that I didn't know I was supposed to have done, he would not talk to me for days, if not weeks. It's still abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It is
emotional abuse
to the 10th degree, because I'm at home with no friends, with no one to talk to, and I am sitting in silence with a partner that's upset with me and won't tell me why. It is, in many ways, an example of really egregious mind control.
And a lot of people who are victims of abuse say that the emotional abuse is often more painful and has more lasting impacts than the physical abuse. Now, of course, that's very fact specific.
Yes. But I just want to give that as an example to your point that it's really the direct opposite of what Diddy did, right? It is silence. But silence can also be abuse. And so it is many different forms of it. And I think this gives us a chance to continue to have that conversation.
So please drop your questions in the comments if you want to hear more about this. I imagine more stuff is going to be coming out in the coming weeks, and we will definitely comment on it.
Yes, and we will have links down below for resources. If you or someone you know is in an unsafe situation, we want to implore you to support them, but also for you to get help. You do not have to go through this alone. We'll see you next time, friends. Thanks for listening to Justice. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justicepodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show, or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.